After the 2010 general election and 21 subsequent by-elections, 2 of which produced both of the UKIP seats by the defection then re-election of 2 former Conservative MPs, this is what the election map looked like on the 7th of May 2015. And this is what it looked like on the 8th. The Conservatives secured an outright majority of 330 MPs and the Scottish National Party swept Scotland, taking 56 of the available 59 seats. Wales remained essentially unchanged, with 25 of the available 40 seats being retained by Labour, and the Welsh National Party Plaid Cymru making no progress over its original 3 seats. Northern Ireland is also broadly similar, with 8 of the available 18 seats being retained by the Democratic Unionist Party, 3 seats being retained by the Social Democratic and Labour Party, and single losses from both the Sinn Féin Republicans and the Alliance Party centrists going to the Ulster Unionist Party, who have an election pact with the Democratic Unionist Party. But the MPs elected to Parliament reflect the votes cast by the national electorate very poorly, leading to renewed calls for electoral reform. So is the current system fair? Why doesn't it produce a parliament that's proportionally representative of the electorate? And is this something that a good system should do? Let's find out. The election results. First of all, the voter turnout, which was touched on at the end of the last video, was up from 2010 at 66.1%. The average turnout in Scotland was notably higher at 71.1%, and the only 2 constituencies to surpass an 80% turnout were Scotland's Dunbartonshire East and Renfrewshire East, though as you can see, even here the majority of people didn't vote for the winning party. On a national level, the Conservatives took 330 seats with 37% of the vote, Labour took 232 seats with 30% of the vote, the UK Independence Party took 1 seat with 13% of the vote, the Liberal Democrats took 8 seats with 7.9% of the vote, the Scottish National Party took 56 seats with 4.7% of the vote, the Green Party took 1 seat with 3.8% of the vote, and Plaid Cymru took 3 seats with 0.6% of the vote. Some outlets continue to report the Conservative Party majority as 331, but this is misleading. The extra person, shown here as grey on the constituency map, is the Speaker of the House of Commons, who, though technically a member of the Conservative Party, can neither debate nor vote, except as a tiebreaker, so it's more like 330 asterisk than 331. Now, you might look at these results and wonder how it can be that the Green Party can get 6 times the votes of Plaid Cymru, yet only 1/3 the seats. Or how the Scottish National Party can get less than half the votes of the UK Independence Party, yet 56 times the seats. Many people see inequity here, and some go so far as to call it undemocratic. So, is this result unfair? Yes and no. It depends on what democratic goals you're trying to achieve and on what scale. For example, do people actually need regional representation in Parliament if they only vote to influence national elections? Must there be exactly 1 representative per constituency, or can there be many? How representative should government be of the electorate? And is it important for the governing party to have a majority of parliamentary seats? Not all of these ideas are compatible, and notions of fairness will depend heavily on which criteria you choose and how important you think they are to a stable and fair society. The current first-past-the-post system is designed to elect 1 candidate per constituency, of which there are 650, such that the interests of each constituency are represented in Parliament by someone who, theoretically anyway, commands majority endorsement from local voters. It'll never produce a proportionally representative government, and it's not designed to. It's meant to elect single, regional representatives with a majority vote to represent their constituencies in Parliament. At face value, this isn't an unreasonable way to structure a democracy. It gives local people a voice in government, for which any party can compete, and it often produces parliamentary majorities for the most popular party. But there are always trade-offs. Whenever we compare who was elected with how people voted, whether nationally or locally, it doesn't matter, there's often a large discrepancy. If one of your initial criteria for democratic fairness is the proportional representation of voters, then yes, this result is unfair by definition. But remember that the UK system was primarily designed to give representation to each constituency, not each voter. The national results we've seen from this election are actually proportionally representative. They just represent local elections, not the national electorate. From this perspective, the results are neither unfair nor undemocratic, though they're certainly unsatisfactory. 1/4 of national voters were effectively ignored this election, and just over 1/3 of voters were awarded 51% of parliamentary seats. In Scotland, the Scottish National Party took 95% of the available seats with only 50% of the vote, leaving almost half of the electorate unrepresented and displeased with the result. On a local level, especially for marginal constituencies, we see a similar distribution. In Derby North, the Conservative Amanda Soloway won by just 41 votes, with minority support from the electorate. In Southport, the Liberal Democrat John Pugh won with a meagre 31% of the vote, which leaves an astonishing 69% of voters with an MP they didn't vote for. And in Clwyd South, Labour's Susan Ellen Jones was elected with only 37.2% of the vote, leaving 63% of voters without an acceptable representative. This would appear to be an objectively terrible way to represent a politically diverse electorate. But why does this happen? Why do first-past-the-post systems so poorly represent the electorate? And why was the Conservative Party able to win if their voters are outnumbered 2-1? The primary culprits here are single winner races and the spoiler effect. When each constituency can only elect a single winner from a pool of candidates, electoral support for that winner will be divided amongst the number of viable candidates running. Once a winner of this contest has surpassed the majority threshold determined by the runner-up, which we've represented here symbolically by mean average data from the election, then additional votes for the winning candidate become irrelevant, and all the votes cast for other candidates have nowhere else to go, so they're thrown away. And so we can see that for our average constituency, 24% of the electorate are devalued for supporting a popular candidate, and 51% of the electorate have their votes discarded because their preferred candidate didn't reach the winning threshold. This problem is intrinsic to a politically diverse electorate trying to elect a single representative. This can only be fixed with multiple representatives per constituency, which are able to accept the excess votes from popular candidates and second preference votes for sub-threshold candidates. As for why the Conservatives won and how their majority is so disproportionately large compared to their share of the popular vote, both of these effects are actually caused in first past the post by the popularity of third parties. The Conservatives got almost exactly the same percentage of the popular vote in 2015 as in 2010, and the political landscape has never been so diverse. Yet despite this, the system just collapses back down to two major parties, and the Conservatives gain 38 seats. Why? What's happening here, which we can illustrate nicely with the St Ives constituency, is that spoiler candidates are splitting the opposition votes between several competing parties, meaning that no single party in opposition to the Conservatives can get enough votes in most marginal constituencies to reach the winning threshold, and so the Conservative candidate wins by default. We can even estimate the size of this effect using the election results. To determine the number of seats the Conservative Party is likely to have won through split opposition votes, we first exclude the 312 constituencies in which the winning candidate got more than 50% of the vote, because in first past the post, they can't lose. Next, we look at which constituencies might have had a split opposition vote by combining the votes from the second and third most popular candidates, and comparing this value to the winner. If the two runner-ups combined are greater than or equal to the winning candidate, the constituency is flagged as potentially subject to a split opposition vote. This leaves us with 185 constituencies, 81 of which were won by the Conservative Party. Subtracting this total from the 331 seats won this election gives us a value of 249, which is 38.3% of Parliament, or the national popular vote received by the Conservative Party, to an error of just 1.4%. This implies that almost the entirety of this parliamentary overrepresentation can be accounted for by spoiler candidates splitting opposition votes in marginal constituencies and allowing the Conservative candidate to win by default. So this accounts for the difference between the popular vote and the election result. But why does first past the post always collapse back down into two major parties? Because remembering this outcome and wanting to influence the national stage, voters in the next election will abandon their preferred third-party candidates in favour of tactical voting for the largest opposition party, in this case Labour, which inevitably leads to the cyclical left-right two-party trap common to first-past-the-post systems. If you vote third-party in opposition to the incumbent, the electorate's votes are split and the incumbent wins by default. The only way to defeat the incumbent is to vote for the second largest party, which collapses the third-party vote and leaves you with a two-party system. What's the solution to this? A new electoral system, which doesn't collapse down into two parties, isn't subject to the spoiler effect, and properly represents the electorate in Parliament. Yes, they do exist. The two most viable alternatives to first past the post in a country like the UK, which wants to retain local elections and representatives, are the alternative vote and the single transferable vote. To learn more about these systems and how they work, I highly recommend CGP Gray's excellent videos on the topic. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please share or give it a thumbs up. You can also support future content on this channel via Patreon.